And now it's time to preview an upcoming game with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to do another Kickstarter preview. This time we're going to look at a role-playing slash board game called Folklore the Affliction. For multiple players, I think it plays all the way up to 4, and all the way down to 1, and this is going to be a game in which you are traveling around a world map in order to reach smaller, more adventure-style boards in order to combat enemies, search for various things, and advance the story in order to advance your characters, make them better, and hopefully, of course, beat each of the scenarios. There are several different levels of difficulty, various items and companions and abilities and spells and all types of different things you can get, and various ways to accomplish each of the objectives in the game. So real quick, why don't we take a look at what you're going to get inside of this box? We'll see how the game plays, and I'll come back here and sum it all up for you at the end. So here you can see some of the components for Folklore the Affliction. Now a quick reminder, these are prototype components, not final quality, so what you get in the final game may differ a little bit in form, but will have the same function as what you see in this video. Now what we're looking at here is mostly the player portion of the game, what the players are going to have individually. Each character is going to have a player sheet. They'll have some items they start with. For example, the archaeologist starts with a whip, the arcanist starts with a ritual and a stiletto, and other characters will start with different items, and they're going to start with a bandage. In addition, you'll see you have a standee for each of the characters. This character will be represented in the adventuring portion of the game when they're walking around specific areas, attacking different monsters, or searching areas for specific things. In addition, you'll see that these cards have a layout that tells you all of the statistics of that character. So for example, we have the telepath here, and it's going to show all of their attributes. You have Vita, which is life, might, which is basically your attack modifier for hitting, power, which is going to be a special thing that you can use to use some abilities throughout the game, the damage you do base, your defense, which is basically your 2-hit value or 2B hit, and then your stride, which is your movement. You'll also see that you have some skills beneath that, and depending on what type of character you are and how much you've managed to advance your character, you'll have different bonuses to different skill checks that you can use throughout the game. In addition, you'll see a turn order, your starting equipment, and then you're going to see a special ability that you have. For example, it says your mental awareness allows you to see that which is normally hidden. You receive no darkness penalties for ranged weapons. So if you have a ranged weapon, you still have the ability to fire it even if you're supposed to be under darkness. At the bottom here, it has all types of different modifiers that can be put on you, both negative and positive, that are going to give you different abilities or detract from your abilities within the game. You'll also see that each player has a set of dice. They're going to have a D6, which will be used for rolling movement and for some other targeting effects. They're going to have percentile dice that are used for the 2-hit abilities. And then they usually have a D4, which is going to be used for damage and may be modified by other effects. You'll also see that each player has 5 of these little tokens. These are their power tokens that they can spend on special abilities that they'll get at the start of the game. Those abilities are going to come from this deck of cards right here, and at the start of the game you can either choose them or they have preset ones that they suggest that you use for different types of characters. For example, this one is from the Madman. It's called Environmental Slaughter. And what this does is when you kill a creature, a corporeal creature, so something that's not a ghost, you can tear a limb from it and use it to hit another person in the area. You actually slam it into an opponent that's 2 spaces away and you deal a D6 damage to them, but it costs you 1 of your power points. And these will replenish when you rest after combat, essentially. So you're going to get some abilities. You'll also have the option to get items when you visit town. You can get more abilities by visiting a church and more items by visiting town and purchasing them with money, which will be silver or gold coins acquired through various effects of killing monsters or doing specific items in the game. You can also get rituals, and the arcanist starts with a ritual called Disorientation. It depends on which one they get. I dealt this one randomly, but it says that all of their enemies are going to get -5 might and -5 defense in an encounter if they can make an occult roll of 8 on a D10. And they would get to add their occult ability to that in order to do this. Now, all of these forms are adjustable inside of these boxes here. You'll see they're dry erase, so you can fill in a name, you can fill in modifications to your characters, whatever you need to do in order to keep track of all of these stats. We also have companions, which are actual people that you can buy, people or animals that you can buy in town in order to get an assistant in the game, and they will modify some of your stats. For example, this one gives you absorption +1, which is going to reduce damage you take from a specific type of damage in the game, and from snares. Or you have a hound here, which is an animal companion that says you gain +2 to damage from water creatures, so it does +2 damage to water creatures. So you can get these at town in the game as well. You'll also see a variety of tokens like doors and grates, rocks, some fallen trees and logs, some scarecrows, and even search tokens to modify different things on the map that you'll be playing in. You're going to have some nice turn order references and some extra dice that you use either when you get bonus dice or dice for skill checks throughout the game, or even a moon die that's going to let you determine whether or not you turn into a werewolf and randomly attack one of your fellow players. Players will be represented on the board when they're in a group by this large pawn, this green pawn, which is the group pawn, and we'll show you how that works in just a moment. So here you can see the world map for Folklore the Affliction. Now this is the general overarching map that shows everything in the game and is going to be what you move around in order to get to smaller, more specialized encounters or adventures that will take place on these smaller maps that look like this, and we'll have more on those momentarily. Now, dependent on which adventure or which story you choose, as outlined by the story journal, you're going to start in different places and have different objectives. Our group here is starting at the Church of the Crossroads because they're doing the first adventure. They're doing the first adventure because they're brand new to the game, they have not leveled up at all, and so they'll be doing the adventure called Everything Changes, which is the first one in the game. It's for the difficulty Dusk, but there's also Twilight and Midnight, depending on how many boons or advancements your characters have, which could be more life, or more might, or whatever the case might be. Now, this guideline is going to tell you everything you need to know about the adventure that you're currently on. It's going to tell you the chapter, it will tell you what the encounter table looks like if you happen to have a random encounter, and it will even tell you to draw an environment card first. So that's the first thing you would do, and you're going to draw this card. This one is called Heaven's Boon, and it's going to give our characters some protection or absorption against creatures of specific types. You can see there's fire and this kind of pentacle here. Our characters will be prevented from damage by those characters by 1 point of damage each time they're attacked by them. After that, it's going to give us some information as to what's happening. This is story information, and it says that we approach this church and we hear a struggle inside, and then tells our leader to make an awareness check of value 8 on a d10. That means that the character would roll this dice, or die I should say, and if they get an 8 or greater after their modifiers from their character abilities, they are going to succeed. In this case, it says they become perceptive, which is going to give them a character bonus on their card here, giving them a perception of +1, which will be bonus for extra rolls later. Once we've completed that, we're going to move on to the next page, and it says that here we enter the church and we see that the curator is struggling with a highwayman inside, and we can make a speech check now at a value of 8 again. We would then re-roll the die, and we got a 3 this time, failing our check. At this point, we would have a skirmish with that character. Our leader is going to fight the highwayman. How this works in skirmishes and all skirmishes is that our character is going to roll percentile dice, and he rolls a 58. He's going to be rolling against the highwayman, which is just an imaginary character for now controlled by one of our other players. That player rolls a 30. Whoever has the higher die roll is going to win the skirmish. In this case, it's our player, and he vanquishes the highwayman, getting 1 silver for each of the characters that's in the group. Alternatively, if our highwayman had rolled higher, he's going to deal some damage to the leader, and then he's going to run off. Regardless, the story will progress in the same manner. Once this is done, the curator of the church is going to tell you that the priest has left based on some ill omens that he's heard in the area, and he went to go talk to the alchemist at the alchemist tower. He wants you to follow him to find the priest and make sure that everything's okay, and at this point you start your turns on the world map. A turn on the world map is going to be led by the leader, who's going to roll a d6, and dependent on the roll, he's going to move that number of spaces, 1, 2. Once he's moved the number of spaces, he's going to draw a road event. After each movement, he's going to draw one of these road events, and he's going to read what it says. For example, this one here is misfortune, which basically tells you that you're very unlucky and you lose all positive statuses. So if we had become perceptive earlier, our leader would now lose that perceptive status, and he's going to essentially just become back to normal. You would then go on another turn and you would roll again. The only exception is if you roll a 1. If you roll a 1, the characters are going to rest, and they're going to regain a Vita, they're going to regain a power point, which they would use on some of their abilities, and if you're a ghost, meaning that you've been killed off at some point earlier, you're going to regain 1 ghost point. Ghosts are simply a way for players that have been eliminated from the game to continue helping out by using a lessened but different set of abilities in order to affect encounters. After you've rolled a 1, you must then re-roll again in order to hopefully get a different number, or even a 1. No matter what you roll, you'll move that many spaces and draw an erode event card again, until you happen to either go to your final destination, in this case the Alchemist Tower, or you might hit a city, for example this one here, which is Wayland Point. When you enter a city, you have several options. Dependent on what city you're in, there are different things that are available. For example, an inn, or you might be able to go to an apothecary, or you can go to the stables, or wherever it might be. There are several different options. Each of these different places has a variety of things you can perform there as long as you happen to have the silver to spend, which is of course obtained by vanquishing enemies or accomplishing in-game things. So for example, if you go to an apothecary, you can buy some different things like vitriol, which you can throw, or you can buy spirit of wine, which gives you plus 10 might for 4 turns, making it easier for you to hit your enemies. Or you can buy expired tonic, which will recover 6 vita for you. So if you happen to be hit several times, you can buy these different things in the form of tokens in order to use them at a later point. Or you can go to the chapel, which will let you buy holy water or liquefied frankincense, both things that are used by a cleric type character to throw at enemies. You can even purify yourself if you happen to have bloodlust or cursed in order to get rid of these statuses, but it's quite expensive. And you'll see inns will let you rest, physicians will help heal you, the stables will let you buy a companion in order to use, the tinker will let you fix certain things or buy wooden stakes or shields in order to protect yourself. And there are many different places you can visit in order to do various things in the city. There are certain things that will preclude you from entering a city, but that's kind of information that you don't need to know. Just know if you do something bad or you get wanted, you may not be able to enter the city and have things done. You're going to progress along the road, taking road turns, flipping over road events, maybe recovering some, until you get to the Alchemist, at which point you'll trigger the next game event. Now, without going into too much more detail, you're going to end up going from the Alchemist over to Ostelink because he's going to send you there to investigate a farm. You're going to travel along the roads, and you'll see certain areas here, like these bridges, say that you have to pass with a D6 2+, or your movement ends here due to a collapsed bridge. So, depending on where you're passing through or passing through the marsh, at a 2+, you become sickened, and of course this is a bad effect that's going to hurt you. But you need to travel up here in order to get to Ostelink. When you get there, you're going to end up going to a farm, which is an adventure board, and now we're going to show you that. So here you can see an example of one of the adventure areas of the game. Now, we would be going right into an adventure, but unfortunately there are some rabid wolves in this farm that we have to deal with first. And so our characters are actually going to enter into what is called an encounter. And there's a specific turn order for this encounter that is basically going to allow our characters to first move, then they're going to attack or do something else, and then they're going to be able to use several abilities if they'd like, and then it will pass to the enemies. So you can see we have 4 wolves here, and our characters are all set up in this quadrant over here, or this actual 4 square area that they're in, because this is the starting zone of this map. In order, or in whatever order they'd like, but usually 1, 2, 3, 4 based on their turn order, the characters are going to go ahead and move first if they would like, or attack, or use their companions, or use any consumable items they have, or even their abilities. They can do this in whatever order they want. These are all listed on the turn reference card for encounters for the characters. So they have several options. They can move, and they would move up to their current, whatever that happens to be, stride value, so whatever's printed on their card. These moves can be either orthogonal or diagonal, so they can step up if they'd like and move up to a monster, or they can move over to something else on the board if they want, maybe try and get over to the search area. Once they've done this, or even before they do this, they can go ahead and act. And acting can be several different things. First, you could attack a foe, and attacking is done much the same way as it's done in the encounters or the skirmishes that you saw earlier, except for that you don't roll off against somebody. So you simply make your attack rolls. In this case, I got a 99, and that is going to be higher than the defense of the wolf, which is a 40. So if I were standing next to it, or if I had thrown a weapon at it, I have a 99, that beats a 40. I then would add my might to it to see if that makes it even higher, but it doesn't really matter in this case. I'm going to hit, and I would do damage based on whatever my base damage is, plus my weapon if I happen to be using one. And the character would lose Vita equal to that, which you could mark on this board here to keep track of the different creatures' Vita. Then I could have the option of using my companions if I had any, using any abilities that I happen to have gotten throughout the game by spending my power points that are indicated down in the bottom left-hand corner. Or I could go ahead and search something if I happen to be by that. So instead of attacking, you can do any of these various different things. You can also use consumable items, so if you happen to have picked up a bandage and you needed to heal some health, you could use these to recover some Vita. Or if you happen to have some vitriol, you could use this to throw it to do a d6 of damage within a range of 3. In addition to that, if you forego your movement or your attack or your act, you can trade items or equip items. So you can actually put on items that you happen to have in your inventory. Or if you're standing next to another player, you can trade them with that player so that they have them available to them on their turn. After one character is gone, the rest of the characters are going to go in order. So they're going to take their movement, do any of the actions they'd like to do with their character until they've all taken their turn. The only exception to this is if somebody happens to be in darkness. They would have to wait until the enemies have taken their turn before they're allowed to do anything, because they're a little bit slow on the movement because they're fumbling around in the dark. Once you're done with all of your characters, you're going to move on to the creature encounters, and they have their own rules on how they're going to work. The first thing they're going to do is, if they're a melee creature, which all of these are, they're going to try and move close to whoever happens to be closest to them. So for example, this guy's going to go up and stand right next to this guy. And right now, everyone would pretty much rush him, but we'd assume that some of our characters would have repositioned themselves on the board to make it a little bit more opportune for them to attack the monsters, and for the monsters to kind of diversify and split up between who they're attacking. So perhaps this guy goes here, but several of these are going to rush over, of course using their own movement stride in order to figure out how far they can go, a maximum of 5 spaces. Ranged enemies are going to move a little bit differently. They're actually going to step away from anybody on the board that they happen to be next to, but try and maintain a line of sight to whoever, or as many people as possible out on the board. Once this is done, melee characters are going to target whoever they happen to be next to, but if there's multiple, they'll actually roll randomly to choose who they're going to attack. Once they've chosen, they're going to roll for their attack. The way they'll do this is they'll roll their target randomization die and their percentile dice to see if they hit, and if they do hit, how much damage they're going to do, and what type of attack it is. So they'd say, they're going to hit person 1, that would be if they were next to 2 people. So let's say person 1 is here, 2, 3, 4. They're going to hit this guy, and they rolled a 63. We would check this person's defense, which is lower than 63, and we'll call this a hit. Moving over here, we'll see that a 1 to 6 in the tens place, in this case we have a 3, is a basic attack, and they're going to lose a d4 of Vita. So you'd roll a d4, and it happens to come up 4. This player has now lost 4 of their life, having been bitten by the wolf. If it had been a 7 through a 0 or 7 through 10, the flesh would be torn by the mouth foaming with blood, and you lose 1d4 plus 2 Vita and must make an ecology 6 to not become sickened. So you don't want to become sick, you have to make a skill roll, ecology 6, to prevent this from happening. You would do this for all of the different monsters on the board, either if they're randomly targeting or not. Check to see if they hit, and then check the tens place to see which type of attack they do and how much damage they do based on the d4 roll. After you've done this for all of your creatures and all of your characters, you're going to have another round, basically. So you're going to check and see if all of the enemies are vanquished. If they're not, you'll start another round with the players being able to move, do their attacks or their abilities, whatever actions they happen to use, and then, of course, passing back to the monsters, who will again move and take their attacks, hopefully dealing some damage to your players, or if you're the players, hopefully not having damage dealt to them. Once all of the enemies are vanquished, you're going to go through the end round status of trying to figure out how much money you've earned and what bonuses you get based on that combat. For each monster you killed, you're going to get a silver coin. So these will eventually be removed, and you're going to get a silver coin for each of them. You're also going to get lore, these little numbers here, of the highest monster that you killed. So that since these are all wolves, you're going to get 1 lore. This lore can be spent back at the Church of the Crossroads, either during this adventure or later, in order to get more abilities, or can be used for re-rolling dice throughout the game. Now, before I go any further, I just want to give an example of how many different types of monsters there are in this game. So we have bat swarms, or restless spirits, or mad druids, or night stalkers, or wretched hags. We have highwaymen and other things. We have an undertaker, and there's a whole huge pile of these over here, all different enemies that you might encounter throughout the game. Regardless, when you're done with this, and once you've gotten your rewards in the way of silver coins and lore, you're going to move back here. You'll also roll a d10 in order to see if you find anything on the monsters. So you can find items randomly on these monsters on a 10 plus with a search. So I'd roll this and see if I found anything, and I'd check the result in the book. So I'd have my 4 plus any search bonus, but I need to get to a 10 plus, so I'm not going to find anything. But if I had rolled well, I'd find a random item on that monster, and I would be able to use that item if it came up as something that I needed or wanted for my character. Now, once we've got all this set up, we're actually going to go on to what's called an adventuring turn. And there's its own specific turn order for this. It's laid out right here. The first thing is that the leader has the decision as to whether or not they want to rest. So you're just done with a combat, you're going to take a look at your skills and your stats, and you're going to see, do I want to recover 4 Vita, 4 Power Points, and 4 Ghost Points per player? The answer may be yes or it may be no, but when you do this, you're actually running the risk of running into encounter. So each encounter, each story has its own encounter table, and you'd have to roll on this encounter table to see if you hit something or find something that you're going to have to fight. Hopefully you roll and you don't have to encounter something, but if you take the risk of resting, you may encounter something that you then have to fight, and you'd be fighting in the dark, meaning you move after all of the enemies. If you decide not to rest, and that can only be done once per adventure board, you're going to move on to character actions, and this is going to be a little bit like the combat. You're going to be able to move up to your stride value, and you're going to be able to search places on the board if you would like. So if you get over to this token over here, you can search this and roll on the search table. The search table depends on what you find, so if you look, you can roll a 1 through 3, and you actually get trapped and lose some life. If you roll a 4 through 7, you find nothing, but on an 8 through 0 or 8 through 10, you're going to draw a card from the item deck and you find something that you may be able to use. There are also specific areas on the board, such as the Scarecrow over here. The Scarecrow is actually laying down, but these are all outlined in your storybook as to what they do. So you could walk over to that Scarecrow and kind of examine it to see what it is. A player that is moved adjacent to this Scarecrow can make a skill roll or a skill check. It's a map skill check using this red die right here. This Scarecrow is actually laying down, and you can see if you can restore him to his proper standing position. This would be a roll of a 5 plus on this die using the ecology skill. I failed, so I would not be able to restore him, but if I rolled a 5 plus using my modified roll, I would get an award die for setting him right in the world. This die is a die that can be used to roll to add to any other check in the game in order to see if you can succeed. So it's kind of a bonus die that you can use to help boost one of your rolls. In order to proceed off of this map, all of the characters must proceed to the exit spots on the board. This includes ghost characters if you have any, but right here on this board, and it would show you in the story journal, these are the 4 exit spots. Once everyone has gotten here, they'd be able to enter the map and proceed to the next map board if there were one, or back to the world map if there weren't. Now, there are more steps to this turn, however. If you don't happen to board transition after everyone's taken all of their turns, you're then going to go on to an event. And each area has its own special event deck. We happen to be in a forest area, and this is again outlined in the story journal. You would flip this over, and it's going to tell you exactly what the event happens to be. So this one says that the path is overgrown, slowing us down, and movement costs 2 stride per space instead of 1. So you're going to move a little bit slower on the board, which may take you a little bit longer to exit, but since you've vanquished everything, may not be a big deal. Once you've done this, you're going to pass the leadership to the next player, and that player would then be in charge of specific decisions of moving and rolling dice, deciding whether or not you rest, and whatever the case may be. Once you're done and you get everybody to the exit, you progress to the next board and you advance the story. And there you have it. That is a small sampling of all of the variety offered in Folklore the Affliction. This game is essentially an entire role-playing game boiled down to being playable in a board game format, which takes a lot of the complex rules, a lot of the movement guidelines and things like that of a role-playing game and puts them onto a board, making it easier to visualize and easier to play. Now, there's all types of variability. There's different characters that have different abilities. There's different statistics for each of those characters. There's items that you can get that are different, abilities that you can choose at the beginning of the game that are different. There's even a way to keep playing, and I mentioned it several times throughout the video, once you're dead. You can be eliminated, having your Vita or Vita returned down to 0, but you become a ghost at this point, and being a ghost will allow you to continue to participate through various effects that you can use to either boost other characters or kind of manipulate the way that the board status is through being a ghost using your influence, but those ghost points, if you spend them, are also your life points. So if you use all of your ghost points, you will die again, and you'll be placed into limbo out of the game. Now, you can still be returned from that effect by going and visiting a gypsy outside of a town, so there's always a way to get back, and there's all types of variability through monsters and items and abilities and all types of stuff going on there. but it's nice and accessible because the storybook kind of keeps you on track and keeps you in the game how to play and giving you a nice outline of how things progress. So if that sounds good to you, there's way more than I was able to show you today. There's decks of cards and various things that I just didn't have time to put into the video, but if it sounds good to you and looks good to you, check out their Kickstarter page and perhaps even pledge.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.